Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be doing a box office breakdown midweek, but since it is now the second day of the new year, I figured we'd just do a little update between a couple of films, one of which, of course, is The Rise of Skywalker. We have some numbers in for its New Year's Day numbers. But we also are going to talk about Jumanji: The Next Level because that film is actually doing very well to the point of it making a pretty decent amount of change when it comes to actual net profits. And so as you can see, the new Rise of Skywalker worldwide totals is around $815 million, making $407 million domestically and $407 million internationally. This seems to make it well on pace to probably reach the $500 million mark domestically, which, if everything else holds in the international marketplace, means that this movie is definitely bound to break the $1 billion, as I've mentioned previously before. But what is interesting is to see the back and forth between this film and the last film in the Skywalker saga, which of course was The Last Jedi. And so when we compare those day-to-day numbers, we see, remember, I mentioned how on Tuesday, or rather on Monday and Tuesday, we have $15 and $13 million respectively versus the $27 million of The Last Jedi. Just keep in mind that these two numbers include both Christmas Day and the day after Christmas, both of which were very well and treated Rise of Skywalker very well when it fell during its run so far, but it has dropped off pretty well. 15 million, 13 million. It jumped back up New Year's Day to 17 million, which is, I think, the fourth highest grossing New Year's Day domestically of all time. It actually comes in behind a couple other movies, including, of course, other Star Wars movies. It did better than The Last Jedi, though, on New Year's Day. So that is an interesting comparison between the two, but the question is going to be, is this coming weekend going to be the time in which The Last Jedi finally falls behind The Rise of Skywalker? It's definitely a chance that that could happen, but if we see another 40 to 50% drop like we saw last week with the 60% drop, then it might not actually come to fruition. So just keeping in mind that we had 26 million Friday, 25 million Saturday for The Rise of Skywalker, and so if we have a 50% drop or close to a 50% drop, that would put that number well below the $19 million that it had made, The Last Jedi had made during its box office run. And so that seems very likely because films tend to drop off in those, second, third, fourth weeks. Will it have a 30 to 40% drop? It's definitely possible, but if it does fall into that half percent, 50% range, then it could spell a disaster as far as a film being able to catch The Last Jedi. It's not going to be a disaster as far as the box office goes because it doesn't really have to make that much more money in order to make profit, in order to break even. Now, I know there's going to be people out there who are, dredging up all these articles and trying to say, look at all the reshoots and the reshoots and the reshoots, and yes, there do seem to be indications now of reshoots, especially with more Reddit leaks that have been coming out from former employees. Again, these are all rumors at this point. We really can't accept them as actual fact, but it should at least be mentioned that it seems to indicate that there were indeed reshoots all the way up until around October before the film was released, which is kind of hectic when you think about it. But you also have to take into account that we don't have any actual numbers in front of us. You can try and say, oh, I'm going to assume $100 extra million, or I'm going to assume $200 million, or, oh, well, if it's 80% of the movie, then we need to take 80% of the original production budget and then add that on top. But that's not really how any of it works. That's not how any of this works. And so, I'll stick with the number that I have because it's just a little bit more than what many different places, many different, reputable newspaper outlets or online outlets talking and covering box office news mentioned about The Last Jedi. I took this one to put a little bit extra on it because it is the last film of the franchise. Again, just using common sense there to add it. You can try and say you're using common sense to add a lot more money on, but let's be honest for a second. Let's just say, hey, if you can at least find me a number being given by one of these sources, then we can talk. But until that time, I just don't think there's a whole lot to go on there. But that does not mean that the film is not going to be a failure in the eyes of the public, because we have to take into account that, yeah, a lot of people are liking this film. A lot of people are hating this film, too. You now even have bigger stars and bigger personalities, the verified blue check marks on Twitter, that, were already against this film when it looked to the critics on Twitter, but now you're even having some people in Hollywood say, yeah, you know what, this film wasn't that good, or hey, you know what, I don't understand that. Now, does that mean the film's not good just because they said it? Of course not, but it is still something that when you have the people that are normally on the side of Disney because they want to try and make Disney happy, now speaking out against it, it's something that we just simply cannot ignore at the end of the day. And so anyway, $407 million versus the $445 million that The Last Jedi had at this point in time. Again, assuming assuming we have even a 30 to 40% drop this weekend, which seems more likely than the 50%, but again, we'll find out. From last week, it seems very likely that it'll come in once again underneath The Last Jedi's weekend for its second Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, which would mean that the number for The Last Jedi will continue to rise, and the Rise of Skywalker will continue to fall behind in that competition. Where do I think it's going to end up? I think it's going to end up around $1.1 billion, but even some people are now starting to say, hey, maybe it just barely crosses $1 billion and must possibly even be barely beating Joker, or if it will even beat Joker at this point in time, which, depending on the drop, we'll get there, but we're not there yet. I'm not there to say that it's going to make less than Joker, but the fact that we're even having that conversation of it being a possibility is something that we just cannot ignore to this point in time. Now, Jumanji: The Next Level is the next film I want to talk about, and this film is doing very well. It's almost crossed $500 million internationally. This film was made for much less money than Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, which means that this movie is already to the point of profit. In fact, it's already made a pretty hefty profit. Let's go over to my Excel sheet. So as you can see, just for a reference, $815 million is what we have right now for The Rise of Skywalker, meaning that it's still $35 million in the red, but that number will soon pretty much become zero because it just needs to make another $60 million or so internationally in order to break even. And it's easily going to make another $600 million because it, at the very least, is going to hit that $1 billion mark. In my minimum projection, $1.035 billion, max $1.4 billion, where the average is a $1.2 billion spread. So I think that this film is definitely going to easily cross the $1 billion mark. The question is, how much over $1 billion is it going to last? Again, we'll have to look to the third, fourth, fifth weekends and to see what kind of drop-offs we have. And also, once competition, because we don't have any competition, or it doesn't have any competition at this point in time, once competition is added to the equation, that could easily change the game quite a bit. But speaking specifically about Jumanji 3, this film has now made $497 million. It was made on a $125 million budget, meaning the entire cost was $187 million, meaning that out of that $497, it has now come away with $111 million. And so that's when you take the actual box office numbers, you understand that they only get about 60% of the receipts. The rest of the 40% goes to the theater chains themselves. You then have to subtract the budget and the financial cost of marketing, and you get your raw net gain. And so right now it is at a gain of over $100 million, which is very impressive. Now, is it at the heights of Joker, which has still one of the highest profit margins of this year with $553 million of net gain, net profit? No, but it is still in the $100 million club when it comes to gains, when it comes to profits, which is very impressive. That means to me that they will definitely be making at least one more movie in this new trilogy. I know that we had the original film back in the 90s with Robin Williams, and so now we've had the second and third films, second and third installments. But in my mind, this is kind of that new trilogy where it has the revamp, the reboot, but it's still also a sequel as well. It's one of those things where it's a sequel to the original story, but it's also rebooting the story for a new generation, for a new group of people, and it's doing so well. When you make over $100 million at the box office in net gain profit, studio's going to look at that and say, yeah, that was worth our investment, because it's not done yet either. I imagine that this film, as you can see from my own projections, it will probably make roughly around $534 million and could even get as upwards and as high as $600 million. It's not going to break $1 billion, but it's still doing well enough to be able to be a serious contender for being one of the most profitable films of 2019, which is very impressive. But anyway, just a little bit of a heads up. I plan on doing some more videos for the channel, especially with the start of the new year. You can expect my top 10 movies of 2019, my bottom 5 or 10 movies of 2019. I don't tend to go out of my way to see bad movies, but if you've been following the channel, you know that there's some movies out there that a lot of people love that I personally was not a fan of, and so therefore those will probably make it on the list at some point in time. I also plan to make most profitable and least profitable or biggest box office bombs of 2019 as well. You can already kind of get an understanding and a hint about what films are going to be on that list, looking at you, Dark Fate and Gemini Man, but we obviously still have a little ways to go for some of these films, because when you look to Cats, for example, it's probably going to be a big box office bomb, but it's still out in theaters, so it's hard to say. This negative for Rise of Skywalker is probably going to go away as well, and so I might have to put that one off for another couple of days just to see where we are, or at least say, because these are still in release, they are no longer eligible, but they could at some point make it onto those lists. I also plan on doing some Blu-ray reviews as well. I was recently sent a copy of Judy from Lionsgate, finished that up and liked it a lot, and I've been seeing a bunch of other films. You've been following me on Twitter, you've seen I've been posting my Letterboxd reviews. If you want to see any just very short couple sentence reviews for movies, check out my Letterboxd. It's a pretty good place for that. I give you my star rating, my actual grade in the review itself, and then just a few words on what I thought about the overall film. I've seen films like Jojo Rabbit, I've also seen other films that I'm blanking out on right now. Ad Astra, I saw. Ad Astra, dear Lord, what an empty, beautiful shell of a movie. But anyway, so expect more from the channel coming out over the next few days. I might actually put my review of Judy and a couple other Blu-rays up on the channel tonight. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about this and all the things we talked about in the comment section below. Also, what do you think the biggest box office bomb of 2019 is going to be? It's not going to be the Rise of Skywalker. So I know there's a lot of people out there that hate Star Wars, that hate Disney, or rather hate Disney Star Wars. And trust me, I'm right there with you. I'm critical of Disney Star Wars too, but the math is just not there on that one. It is not the highest. It's not going to be the biggest loss of the year. Again, we'll talk about Dark Fate, Gemini Man, and possibly, most likely, films like Spies in Disguise or Cats, but we still got a ways to go on that one. But anyway, let me know your thoughts, again, in the comment section below. What is going to be the biggest box office bomb of 2019? Anyway, let me know your thoughts on that, and all the stuff we talked about in the comment section below. Like this video, smash the like button, give us a subscribe. It helps us out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.